some more.
Yo, what's good, people? Izzy Max here, back again with some more MDL content. This is the Week 3 breakdown, and I am joined by Ryan. Hello.
How's it going?
So, the second time us trying to do this, we're not gonna take too much time doing the breakdown this week because we did just do a power ranking video, and we did kind of talk about the Week 3 games, but not in excess. So here we're just gonna kind of touch on some bases that we didn't get to touch on. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Game 1, we have Matt versus Brock. So Ryan, why don't you go ahead and talk about this one?
Yeah, so this game was a really good showing by Matt. Similar to what we were talking about in the power rankings, Matt called out exactly what Brock was going to do, which I think is extremely impressive too, because I don't think it's immediately apparently obvious. Going for a Hawlucha sweep was kind of the idea. Hawlucha and Goodra were kind of the ideal modes for Brock. And Matt called that out really nicely. He had some really great prep. We didn't even see it in the match, but I know the Vanillix was Choppleberry, which took a hit from Hawlucha really surprisingly well. And he just really was able to call out Brock. Brock obviously in game 1 didn't lock in his Mons, but based on the way that game 2 went, it was hard to make a comeback. Even if he had locked in correctly game 1, game 2 would have been a hard uphill battle. It was just a really good showing by Matt, and really showed like the level of prep and play that he's been bringing to the league. And definitely too, a lot of the more creative and interesting sets we've seen from Matt.
Oh yeah, for sure. Next up, we have Jizzy and Nin. This was the last game. This game wasn't done when we did the power rankings, but it looks like Darmanitan just kind of went in.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess and say Jizzy was not ready for a Euvonian Din? Or is it Euvonian?
Yeah.
Darmanitan?
Might as well.
It might as well be, I don't know. But yeah, Darmanitan, just like I said, just went in. It claimed 6 of the 7 kills that that Nin claimed, so
yeah, which, hey, huge props to Nin. He picked up a good win, and this, according to us in the power rankings, that did secure Nin a nice 11th place in the overall rankings of the league, which is great for him. And we are actually seeing a little bit more team variety from Jizzy. Very happy to see the Durant there, and I think the Luxray actually was a pretty smart bring against Nin, but to me it looks like Nin just kind of knew what he had to do.
Very much so. Yeah, not much to say about this one. We didn't get to watch it. Next up, we have Hub and Dark King. Going into this match, I knew that Dark was going to have an issue with Urshifu and Cinderace. What I didn't know was he was going to have a huge issue with Mimikyu. Mimikyu kind of just sat on the field and went in. While he was getting pressured by the Cinderace and the Urshifu, Mimikyu was in the background, not taking hits, but doing solid damage. I think in game 1, it knocked two of the three offensive Mons in the red for Urshifu and Cinderace to kill them in the following turn. So, in reality, Mimikyu probably had 6 kills this game. Other than that, I don't really know what Dark could have done to get over this game. Because, like I said, Urshifu, if you look at what he brought, kind of just hits everything. Cinderace, the offensive pressure, and Dark doesn't really have the speed to compete with both of those. So I feel like that's kind of what happened this game. Any words from you, sir?
Not really a whole lot. I think you kind of touched on all the bases. Yeah, Mimikyu turned out to be a surprising problem, I will have to say. Definitely, one thing that did surprise me was the Mimikyu was outspeeding the Porygon Z at times. Which was definitely surprising.
Which, I mean, it makes sense. Mimikyu's at what, 95, 96 base?
Yeah.
And Porygon is base 90, but Mimikyu had
Porygon's
0
base
speed.
90, but it was kind of crazy to see. I was like, oh, I forgot how fast Mimikyu is.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget.
And like I said, it was at mint speed, so...
Yeah. Overall, though, it was a pretty solid set.
Yeah.
Nice win by Hubbub that week. Nothing too much to add.
Nope. Next up, we have Toxic and C-Rad. We talked about this game actually in length in the breakdown because it did kind of have some relevance. Toxic, of course, DC didn't bring the same lead, and we had to DQ and figure out what it all was going on. But no matter what, Rhyperior winning. Crux of the story, Rhyperior was a threat.
Yeah, that Earthquake, Rock Slide, Pressure just kind of ate Toxic's team. And we saw some other good stuff. The Slow King was there, did some nice work. But yeah, no, this was a good showing by C-Rad. It's also the first time I've really seen C-Rad just like pull the trigger on a good old set, honestly, with his team.
Yeah.
I mean, he pretty much just said classic weakness policy, Solid Rock, Rhyperior has it, and he brought it.
Oh, and this was Fairy Silvally,
which I actually really like. I think that's a good bring. Toxic, he has like the best skill type in Excadrill, but between T-Tar and Como now, there are some fairy weaknesses, but overall the fighting and ground and rock is a little worse for wear on his team, I think.
Yeah, that like I said, we talked about this game already. Next up is me and John at a -1 finish.
This game was nuts. Honestly, it was really good showing. John really showed off Blastoise this match.
Cannonade was a pain in my butt.
Yeah, it did a lot of really, really good work. The Roserade set was really cool. It was just a really good showing by John in particular. You had, of course, great showing. This is the first week you brought Mamoswine, and it did a lot of work for you.
It was weakness policy, and I still didn't even proc it.
Yeah, Mamo did a lot of really good work in this set. Overall, though, to me, John Boy really, really just played around your team nicely, and even with some of those surprise factors he wasn't expecting, he still managed to pull, I think, a pretty nice win for himself.
Well, I think what secured him the win is he was putting me in awkward 50-50s.
Yes.
To where if I didn't make the right call, I lose. And that's kind of what happened in Game 3. You know, I got put in two 50-50s, and turns out I made the wrong call on both 50-50s. It cost me the game. If I made the right call, Yeah,
you win. But it's good for as a player to see John Boy doing that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And it's good to see that kind of... it's good to see that he knew that he put you in a situation like that. So yeah, really, really good game. Very good win for John Boy. This was a big win for John Boy as well. So I'm excited to see what the rest of his season ends up looking like.
Next up, we have Tay and Hunter. So I'll talk about this game because I kind of got the breakdown. If you look at this, you think, okay, Ludicolo got its weakness policy off and went in. On the other hand, Ludicolo actually never got hit. Didn't proc its weakness policy. Hunter actually knew that he had a chance to kill the Ludicolo because Lapras had freeze dry. And Lapras was always the last mon to actually die. So he was actually targeting around the Ludicolo, which worked to an extent. Because once the Lapras was done Dynamaxing, it could actually hit it, but then Lapras had already taken enough damage to die from the Leaf Storm. So it was kind of this weird, Ludicolo looking like it was being dominant, but it kind of wasn't. If I had to say, I would say Diggersby was more dominant than the Ludicolo, even though the numbers don't show that. But I'm also glad to see Hunter actually get a lot of work out of the Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr was the reason that Ludicolo didn't get its weakness policy procced. But, yeah, that's kind of how this game went. The Cobalion was just a flex. It was a literal, unusable set. He just brought it to show it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on this.
Yeah, from the sound of it, it was a pretty solid game. Targeting is hard in these kind of settings, definitely. I'm very happy to see Hunter brought Conkeldurr this week. I think that's a mon that he's been kind of sleeping on a little bit on his team. It's good to see that he really has decided to bring it in. But that said, on Tay's end, it looks like the prep was pretty solid, and it looks like it's. I always like seeing Diggersby. It's not a mon you see a lot in traditional doubles play, but man, it hits so hard.
Yes, it does. It was choice
It was a
banded
good
this
bring,
week.
and it was a pretty good bring against Hunter's team too. The matchup was overall, I think, in its favor. So
On the prep, Diggersby had Brick Break, and Dracovish had Psychic Fangs. So Lapras really didn't have a chance to get its screens up.
Yeah, which that's good. I actually have commented before. There is definite merit to just throwing Brick Break on Mons for screen abuse teams, and Hunter is one that really likes having screens up.
Yep. And then lastly, we actually have our transactions. There are a lot of good ones this week, so let's go ahead and get them started. I'll let you do the first one.
My boy, yes. So we're seeing Steelix for Golisopod. I actually think this is totally a great trade. Golisopod is one of my personal favorite mons. It's a really, I actually think it works really well on Nin's team. Nin's team, to me, is taking on a more hyper-offensive archetype, which I think is good for it. Having Priority First Impression, Sucker Punch, Aqua Jet to proc a few of his mons, that sort of thing is great for him. I think this is a trade that is really nice. I think it's going to work out really well for him. Losing Steelix may or may not hurt. We'll see. I don't really have any negative feelings towards this trade, though. I think it's really solid. Very happy. Please get a match with Recorded Dynamax Golisopod for me and get like 6 kills with it. That's all I'm asking for.
Oh, man. Go ahead. I'll let you take the next one, too.
Yeah, so the next one, Brock has switched out Scorch for Gardevoir. Gardevoir's a pretty nice mon. Brock didn't really have a good Psychic type, so this is actually really nice for him that way. Also, even though Comfey is a Fairy type, it's not like an offensive Fairy type. It's usually run fairly supportively, especially with his Team Arc build.
Yep.
So having an offensive Fairy type with a pretty good speed tier is nice for him. It also gets Trace. Trace and Synchronize, which lets him deal with status and weather potentially pretty well. So he can use Trace to match Rain Sweepers or match different sweepers that people have, which is nice. And it's got good anti-Trick Room. So
right, for sure,
I think this is a really good trade. I don't think Scorch was coming to games very often for Brock.
I don't think it was coming at all.
Yeah, and this Gardevoir I think will be coming to games.
Oh, yeah. Next up, we have Hunter dropping Scissor for Tangela. On his team, Scissor's not really going to be doing anything because you are already bringing Klefki. And Tangela actually gives him redirection, which I think will really, really help his other sweepers, such as the Lapras and potentially the Marowak.
Yes.
So I really like Tangela.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the best trades on the list. Tangela is pretty solid. It's got some redirection. It's very bulky with Eviolite. It does have a similar problem to Fungus, though, where Fungus can kind of end up getting worn down because it can't run like Koba Berry and things like that. Tangela's in a fairly similar spot, but it's actually even a little bit better because Tangela's base defense is like 115.
Yeah, it's huge.
So like even without Eviolite, you can still theoretically like maybe get like a 2-hit KO on it.
Right.
Which is really nice, actually. I think this is a really good trade. I think it'll work out well for him.
For me, I'm actually dropping the Ditto for Serena. So against Brock, I think Ditto would have done really, really good work if it was brought correctly. But other than that, Ditto is extremely, extremely hard to use. So I don't really want it because I would put it on my teams as I'm prepping, but then I'd realize, well, if this doesn't go off, this mon's just useless. And I just lost to John because I didn't really have an answer to his water types. So instead of me counterpicking people, I'm actually building my team to finish the season for playoffs, and I feel like Serena was actually a really, really good pickup for me. And yeah, I think that's literally just it. Ditto is extremely hard to use, and kudo to anybody who can do it. I'm not gonna try.
Yeah, Ditto's a tough mon to use. That said, I do think it is a mon that potentially someone might want to pick up. Especially if they end up wanting to counterpick your team, I think Ditto is okay. But that said, it's a tough mon to use. And it's kind of situational at times. Serena's just overall a pretty solid mon. It's a good Dynamax option. Queenly Majesty is one of the best abilities for doubles, period. And you can definitely abuse that a little bit, because there are some teams that, a lot of the teams in the league have prankster users, like good prankster users, and Serena just shuts that down.
Yep.
By itself, which I think is great.
Yep. Toxic actually dropping Dugtrio, who was useless on his team, for Torkoal.
Yeah, this is a good trade.
I really, really like this, and this actually makes his Serena trade relevant.
Yeah, picking up Lilligant.
Or Lilligant, yeah, my bad. Yeah, it actually makes that trade relevant.
Yeah, you really, all the coaches need to watch out for after you eruptions from Torkoal Lilligant. It's a very, very threatening combo.
He can also now run Solar Power on Charizard.
Yeah, which is also threatening. That said, one way you can kind of, you just need to have answers for that now, which does make his team harder to prep for, because now he really has a Sun option and a Sand option. That said, though, the weaknesses are shared among those options in essence.
Yeah. The Charizard does kind of help though, but yeah.
The Charizard helps, but like the weaknesses are still there. Like if he brings the Sand Core and you have ground coverage, great. If he brings that Sun Core and you have rock coverage, you're in pretty good shape. Because Lilligant outside of the After You move has Sleep Powder and then basically nothing.
Leaf Storm.
It gets Leaf Storm and it gets Protect. So it can do some stuff with that, but it's kind of a one-dimensional mon in that respect. So you can definitely work around these strategies, but it does make Toxic's team a lot more volatile and a lot harder to deal with. So I do think this is a really, really, really good trade.
Yep, you can go ahead and take the next couple.
Yeah, so we got John Boy Hatterene for Caparaja. I do like this trade. Hatterene is a really, really good mon. I do think that someone should probably pick up Hatterene that has a good team that fits for it. But John Boy, it really wasn't fitting his team. And he already has Dusclops, which is like the best Trick Room setter in the game. And you're not likely going to be able to manage a good Hatterene sweep with his team comp. Caparaja gives him a nice steel type. It gives him some more coverage. It's a good option, just all around. I think it pairs really nicely with a few of his mons too. So I overall approve of this trade. That said, Hatterene is something that if you want a fairy type for your team, or if you want another sweeping option, you should definitely take a look at it. Sure. Next trade is Matt. He did Inteleon for Barraskewda. This is a really good trade. Politoed wasn't doing a whole lot on Matt's team, especially because Liepard could click Rain Dance, like Prankster Rain Dance, and it wasn't really... There wasn't a huge reason. With Barraskewda being added to his team, now he has a really threatening Rain Sweeper. Barraskewda is like under Rain is like one of the fastest things available to draft. It's insane. Its speed tier is ridiculous. It hits extremely hard. It's very, very frail, but Inteleon was frail too, and that did really good work on his team. So we'll see. I could see Matt potentially picking Inteleon back up if someone else doesn't snatch it, which could happen as well. So yeah, I think this was a pretty solid trade overall. Like it a lot.
Barraskewda was his original pick anyway.
Yeah, so it makes sense. So pretty happy with that. Hope it works out well for him.
Yeah.
And then a really scary trade.
His team keeps getting scarier.
Yeah, that someone should have taken Hydreigon on this list. The problem is I like all these trades.
Yeah.
I don't dislike any trade this week, so it's hard to say who should have taken Hydreigon, but like someone should have taken Hydreigon before it got to Tay. Hydreigon's a threat. It actually works really well on Tay's team too. The speed tier is really nice. He can just like Tailwind Whimsicott and just go in hard with Hydreigon and like Dracovish, and like what are you gonna do? The other thing with Hydreigon is that it has a U-turn, which is relevant because he's been using U-turn to proc Ludicolo, so he can do that as well. There's other options too. It's super versatile, and yeah, Tay's team is significantly scarier for having that mon be added to its comp.
For sure. And I think that's it. We're going to be around 20 minutes. Like we said, this wasn't going to be a long one today.
Nope. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to keep it kind of simple next week. I think we're just doing standard old weekly breakdown.
Yep. It'll be a little bit longer next week, but yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Next week is actually important for a lot of coaches.
It really is. There's some really important matches that are happening next week, especially for that 4 through 7 crowd in the power rankings. Almost every single one of them has an important game.
Yeah, I'm playing Matt. Woohoo.
Yep. we got C-Rad and Brock playing each other and all sorts of stuff. It's going to be fun.
Yep. So, without further ado, I guess I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.